Hello, it's Mary Edwards here with Barbara Lamb. We're connecting with the stars today to share our book, part two of our book, E.T. Friends in Space, that we created last year in honor of communication, positive communication with children and adults with ETs. So, Barbara is a legend. And I'll let her tell her about herself in a couple of minutes. But she has been a friend of mine and a wonderful cohort while we were creating this little gem of ours. We had so much fun putting it together, and I learned a lot, and I think we both did doing it together. And she's going to tell you a little bit about her background. I'm sure most of you know her, but she's done thousands of regressions and on me and lots of people who has really helped get down to the core of some of these experiences and many other gifts that you have. So take it away, Barbara. You can share your path and a little bit of your history before we dive into the book as much as you like.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Well, I've been a psychotherapist since 1976. And in the mid 1980s, I started getting 5 years of training in doing hypnotic regression therapy. And that focused mostly on past lives, which I still do some of that work. But then by 1991, I started working with people who had had visits from unusual beings, extraterrestrial beings. And many of those people in the 1990s did quite a number of regressions with me. And therefore, I learned so much about the whole phenomenon of extraterrestrials visiting humans, not every human, but still millions and millions of humans, and taking them away for an hour or two for various purposes. And so I was learning a lot there. And also in the 1990s, I was talking with children who were having their own experiences of waking up in the night and finding an unusual being there in the room. And they reacted in various ways. Some of these kids really kind of liked it because they considered these visitors, even though they look really different than we do, but they considered them as their friends, their playmates. And some kids were just absolutely terrified that some sort of being that was so different was in their room and they didn't know what was going to happen. So anyway, there was a whole variety of reactions that children had. So I was able to regress some of these children, and some of them I simply talked to at great length a number of times because they sometimes would remember quite a bit of the experience that they'd have with the beings on a spaceship. So, I mean, I thought that was wonderful. And they seemed to be talking very seriously as if it was the truth. They didn't seem to be making it up. But anyway, I was certainly getting the picture that for many, many people, these experiences with the other beings begin in childhood. So since 1991, I've been regressing many adults to their extraterrestrial experiences. And what we have found often is that some of those people who have come to me for regressions, they consciously remember different peculiar events that happened to them with the other beings when they were children. And some of these adults who came to me and are still coming to me, I'm still doing this work. Some of these adults have not been aware that these kinds of things happen to them during childhood, but during the regression that we do to an experience that happened later in life, maybe when they were a teenager or in their adult life, that in that regression we realize, or the person realizes, oh, yeah, this has been going on since I was a little child. And they begin to remember some of these childhood experiences, which they had either forgotten or they had been blocked from remembering. So it became more and more important to me that, children really need to have some information about this. I mean, there probably are millions of children. It's been estimated 8 million adults in America alone are having these kinds of experiences with the other beings. And that 8 million includes many, many children. So this is a really important topic. And as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, it's not talked about in the mainstream media. And so when Mary and I got together, we both suddenly thought, wow, it could be a real service to people to have a book aimed at children. So children would look at the pictures and read the captions, or maybe have them read to them, to validate the experience that these children have, and also to acquaint other children with the fact that this does happen for many, many children. So we got together with great excitement, and we still are very excited about this wonderful book, Kids Adventures with E.T. Friends in Space. So there we are. I'm still doing this work with adults and with younger people as well, regressing to all kinds of concerns, mostly to the extraterrestrial visits, but many people also currently are coming to find out in regression what their real life purpose is. And that's wonderful when people really get in touch with that and then go ahead and take steps to fulfill whatever that purpose is. So the regressions can have a number of different benefits for people. But right now, Mary and I are focused on the children.
Right.
Maybe you
So,
need to say something.
exactly. Well, I was just going to say, I was one of those children, as you know, and few people know that I'm sort of coming out of the ET closet. That happened. I was taken on a craft at age 5, and at 6, and at 10, and it was a little weird to go up into a spacecraft and be looked at and talked to by little ETs. And my father was with me, which was very comforting. But over the years, I had memories of it. I had conversations. My parents didn't talk about it to me because my father was a rocket scientist and involved in his company with the U.S. government and the Navy, and he was pretty in the NASA and was sworn to secrecy to not discuss it. So there may be millions of me too that grew up in the 50s that went up on craft almost 70 years ago. And now we're in the second space race where the ETs are coming, where you see UFOs, we see UAPs, we see so much more connection now and visualization of ETs watching us. And over my lifetime, I'm after a couple of regressions with Barbara and researching it on and off my whole life and talking to my dad who passed a few years ago. He said, yes, I did take you up and we were part of this. And I said, well, it's been a long time. I've been wondering, I thought I was crazy. I knew I had dyslexia and ADD and all these things. I know now I'm not crazy. And thank you for talking to me. I've talked to him 15 or 20 times now. And he's really validated that experience and that it was for the good. It was for the benefit of humanity, that we are here. And I know my purpose is to help children and adults like you in different ways, in a similar way with our book, to really take some of the fear and basically the fear and the scariness out of the ETs and experiences. And that's what our wonderful little book here, E.T. Friends in Space, that I drew and we worked on together. It says stories of friendship and learning between human kids and extraterrestrials. And it is based on real accounts from Barbara's regressions. And last week we started walking through the book to read it to children and families who happen to be listening, to explain what the purpose of our book was and how we came to do the drawings and the stories that Barbara and I selected out of her vast thousands of regressions that she had done. So we are here to provide the positive side. And we know other people have had other situations that maybe were a little bit scary. It was a little bit scary to me in the beginning, but now over decades of having more contact and understanding a little bit more, I really realized that I sort of put alongside my design and degree and work and career the last 40 years, and I'm now diving into this to help all the other people that have had similar situations like me, so we can and make it a little more fun and a little more interesting and prepare and condition children and adults for these next steps. So we started walking through some of the pages on part one last week, and now we're going to start part two, walking through some of the experiences that we picked out in our book to share with some of the positive experiences that kids have. So Barbara, you want to take it away and explain some of the
Yes, well,
we have about 8 or 10 pages here to go through to show you what we have in our book.
so here's a depiction of a little boy with three of the extraterrestrial beings watching him. They have given him a glass of dark fluid to drink because that particular night when he was taken, he was not feeling well. He was coming down with a cold or a flu or something, and they could see that that was the case. So they gave him this dark liquid to drink, and it completely cured whatever that illness was. And this is very typical of the beings who actually look very different than we do, but they are very kindly. Hopefully the pictures of these beings show that even though they're very different looking than we are, that they were rather sweet and kindly and caring about the little boy, as many of the extraterrestrial beings are. Let's go on to the next one.
Okay.
Okay, this is a typical thing that happens for children. This is depicting the inside of a curved spaceship. You can see the window out there and stars and other planets that can be seen through that window because this UFO is out there in space. And then we have here a circular room and children sitting on the floor with two different types of extraterrestrial beings sort of accompanying them. So every child looks different. The one at the top with the blue suit and has very scraggly hair, and the little girl next to him in the red dress has very spiky, scraggly hair. Those are hybrid beings. They are beings that were created by mixing the reproductive material of humans with extraterrestrial genetics. And then on the left side, we have a typical little gray being. This is a gray child being who is here in this informal classroom. And then in the lower right corner, we have a little girl in a dress, blonde hair. She's been taken from Earth for this experience. And she's sitting next to, on her right, a little gray being. And then next to that, with this sort of greenish outfit, is a little boy from Earth who has been taken for this experience. And then the little girl in the kind of the upper right, this is a hybrid also. So in other words, there are classes for Earth children who were taken to the UFOs, and the classes are made up of some extraterrestrial beings and some hybrid beings, and usually at least one other human being who has been taken from this. So in the middle of the circle, we see a ball. The idea here is that the children are being taught to move that ball across the circle to each other and move it simply with their minds. not by touching it in any way at all. So they have been taught in teleportation. They usually start with something very, very light, like a very small bird feather. And then maybe they'll graduate to being able to move with their minds a paper clip or a piece of paper. And as they accomplish these things, they are given heavier and heavier objects. And in this particular case, these children have learned teleportation very well, and they really know how to move things with their minds. And in this case, they can move that ball from the middle of the circle to one of the children on the other side of the circle. Again, simply with their minds. Okay, next picture, please.
Okay. And I just want to add a comment too. I have 125 or 28 hybrid children. 25 of them do live on a craft because, like Barbara said, some of them are a little bit different sometimes, and they can't really come down to earth. I have many that are in China that are in their 20s. I have several kids in South America that are in their 20s, and they're all over the world. I have many in the Pleiades, but 25 of them are a little too different to come live on Earth. And when they do bring them down to Earth, they get basically adopted in small towns in South America and China, not necessarily in big cities where they might be made fun of because their eyes are bigger, their look is a little bit different, their hair's a little straggly. So anyway, it's been interesting for me to due to part of working on this book, to research some of my hybrid kids and where they live and how they're doing. A few of them know about me and a lot of them don't. Maybe we'll talk about a little bit about the hybridization programs a little bit after we go through the books. But it's very interesting how, they live in different places for different reasons, and also getting all these wonderful experiences to learn how to do all these wonderful tricks and learning different things on the crafts.
Many children are taken at night to what they call a secret school. In other words, a child will be sleeping in bed and will wake up in the middle of the night with the impression that he or she must go outside, get on his or her bicycle, and ride to the woods where there is a classroom going on. Other children sitting on the ground, and usually a tall extraterrestrial being there as the teacher. So the teacher here in the middle of the night teaches the children many, many different things about space, about the other beings living on many of these planets. And sometimes they're taught special skills as they are on the craft. Anyway, they taught many, many aspects of reality. And the teaching seemed to be different than whatever the child is learning at school. It's very specialized learning, very extended, expansive learning. And so these children grow up with a really big perspective about space and life on other planets, and so much more about reality than our children are taught about at school. Let's go on to the next one.
Okay.
And here is another kind of classroom that children are taken to. This is a classroom on the ship, on the UFO. And sometimes there is a blackboard or a whiteboard where different things are being taught. Here we have different star systems and how they kind of line up together on this blackboard. And very typically, the child will be put in a barrel-shaped chair, which has sort of a computer-like screen on it. And there's a lot of learning that happens right there on that screen, as we do now with our own children learning on the internet. And very typically, there are a couple of different kinds of beings there supervising what the child is learning and answering any questions and sort of coaching them in their learning. And again, the things that they learn on the ship are really, really different than what children are learning in our schools. It's a very stimulating, exciting experience for a child to be taken for this kind of learning. Okay, next one, please.
Oops, wrong page, sorry.
Okay, now this is a group of beings that I experienced, and some children I know experience them from time to time. These beings seem to be made mostly of light. They're kind of a peachy pink color, and they're almost transparent. They're very tall, they're very thin, and most importantly, they are very lovely. They're very kindly, very loving of the people who are taken to be with them. So here's a little girl, a red dress and blonde hair, who's been taken to this particular kind of craft, which, by the way, doesn't look like a metal craft. It looks more like a peachy pink colored ball or large sphere with a cotton candy type of texture. This is definitely not what we hear about with most of the UFO reports, but there is this kind of craft and these kinds of beings on it. So these beings have brought the child there to encourage the child, to learn more about the beings in space and all that's going on in space and so many different aspects of reality that are simply not discussed at school on Earth. So when a child is taken to be with beings like this, it's a very loving, honoring experience, and the child really benefits from this. Okay, next one, please.
Okay.
So here we have a situation where a little boy that you see on the right side with the green shirt, he has been taken onto the craft and put in a room with other children. And in this case, all the children that he's playing with are hybrid children, seen with this sort of scraggly, kind of unruly hair, and they're very thin. But here they are playing an earth game that many children play, jacks, throwing the ball and picking up the jacks. And this little boy is teaching the hybrids who live on the ship, he's teaching them how to play this game. And there will be probably many other occasions when he's taken on the ship and teaches children there how to play earth games, because otherwise they would have no way of knowing that. You see, these beings, these extraterrestrial beings, many of them are very, very interested in humans and what we do here in our lives. And they're very interested in children and what children do. So this is sort of an enhancement for the hybrid children living on the ship to learn about these Earth children, remembering, of course, that the hybrid children are part extraterrestrial and part human. And so here they are getting to know more about the human aspect of them, and how better to do that than to have a human child visiting them and teaching them about what human children do. Okay, next, please.
Okay.
Okay, this we may have talked about last week. This is the UFO visitation to the Ariel School in Zimbabwe, Africa, when children were out at recess one day and they noticed that in the field right outside of the schoolyard, an unusual craft landed. We know that craft to be what we would call a UFO. And out of that craft came a few beings who came right into the schoolyard and talked directly to many of the children one by one. So they were there to warn the children to really take care of the earth, to tell their parents and other adults about caring well for the earth, because these beings could see that with our pollution and all the things that we do to create difficulty here on earth, that the earth is really suffering and may get ruined unless we stop that. So here they are, influencing children to grow up and be responsible about doing whatever they can and influencing other people to take better care of planet Earth. Okay.
And you just want to mention too how they went back. John Mack and different people went back. They've done films on this, and it's been written up in a book by Prescott about how they had really changed their lives. So why don't you want, while we're on the same picture, do you want to talk a little bit about that? How
Yes.
really, as adults, they went back a couple of times, right, and talked to them, and they had old drawings, and they interviewed them to learn how it psychologically affected them, how it changed their whole lives from that moment, that day.
Right. Well, first of all, back in the early 1990s, I think it was 1993, that Dr. John Mack from Harvard, he was the head of the psychiatry department at Harvard, and he had been regressing people like I do to the details of some of their extraterrestrial encounters. And he heard about this event at the Ariel School and dropped everything and flew to Africa, to Zimbabwe, and went to that school and interviewed as many children as he could about what the being said to them and also how it affected them. These children were all very, very affected because, for one thing, they had never heard of or seen a UFO like was out there in the field, and they had never met any of these UFO beings, the extraterrestrial beings. And so they were, stunned. I mean, they had never heard of this. And here was this whole new thing right there with them in their faces. And they were also very impressed with the sincerity of the visiting beings and the urgency with which they spoke about getting people to take better care of the earth. So anyway, they were very, very impressed. Now we're going to move forward a number of years to a man named Randall Nickerson. He went down to Africa, having been very moved by this whole event. And he knew John Mack very well as well. So he went down to Africa in the last several years and started interviewing these children who had grown up by then, and to see how they were still feeling about that event. All of them whom he was able to find and interview were still enormously impressed by that experience, deeply, deeply moved that there were beings from somewhere else that bothered to come all the way to Earth and warn us about taking good care of the Earth. So I happened to meet, well, I already knew Randall Nickerson, and I happened to meet some people that he brought to the UFO Congress conference. And I met about 4 of these people who had grown up. They had been the children in that schoolyard approached by the extraterrestrials. And one woman I had lunch with, she was, probably in her late 20s at the time. And we had lunch together. And as she was talking about that experience that she had had when she was a little girl, she actually sat there at the lunch table crying, crying in the sense of being so deeply, deeply stirred and moved that these beings would come and warn the kids and the kids that these beings were so caring about planet Earth. It seems like these beings were more caring about Earth than most of us humans are. And we really need to wake up to that.
Right.
It's a very, very important experience.
Well, and plus how some of them got into sustainability and all different careers that related, when I've read a little bit about it, to really and change their lives to be able to really work on helping heal the planet, which is really
Yeah.
extraordinary, really extraordinary. And they do care about us, so they are watching, and it's a good big wake up call for all of us, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But what a that and also, we know that there have been many books by Prescott and several other people on why ETs go to schools and why, we aliens, ETs go into people's bedrooms like they did mine. They go to schoolyards to influence specifically the children to warn them. And that is gone on all over the world in dozens of situations, correct, like this. So what a wonderful tribute for them to know that children will be impacted maybe more than some of us older adults who have been here sort of wrecking the planet for a long time.
Well, they certainly see the decisions that the adults have been making
Yes.
and continue to make, which add more pollution and more difficulty, not only to the earth, but difficulty to people
Right.
staying well. So maybe they've kind of given up on the adults who
Well,
make
they, well, they,
decisions.
well, I think, well, they should in some ways, but also they go to nuclear plants and have shut down some of those systems too. So they do come and teach us in so many different ways that we're learning here, not only with children, but parents and adults. But these
Right.
schoolyard ones are particularly fascinating to me because they're smart to come and get them young. So it will impact their lives. And here we're talking about it right now. So we pass it on, right? Okay.
Right.
Next page.
Okay, so this is a council meeting with the clients whom I've regressed. Many of them have been taken to different kinds of council meetings out in space. Now, some of them are a relatively small group like this council, made up of a variety of different types of beings. We've shown different looks that some of the beings have. And these councils are all very important, and they have representatives from various planets, which means that they look in a variety of different ways. And then, so this child is being taught that when he grows up, he might be able to be a member, like a representative from Earth, to this council meeting. Some of the council meetings are absolutely enormous, with thousands of delegates from many, many different planets, including planet Earth. I've had two clients whom I have worked with in several regressions each, and each of them were taken to that very huge council meeting when they were adults, and they were in the human contingent. There were maybe about 8 representatives from planet Earth, and then all around them on tiers, like a big amphitheater room, there were many, many different species. And in that council meeting, they all wore hoods that came out past their faces so that they would not be distracted by the different looks of all of these beings. The only way they could see what one of them looked like was just to stand right in front of them and look into the face rather than any other angle. They wouldn't be able to see the face. But so they have some sensitivity too, apparently, some of them, about the way that each other look, coming from different planets and different species. But I think it's lovely that this particular child I worked with was encouraged to continue his interest in space and in other civilizations and what's going on in space, and to be encouraged to grow up and want to contribute to one of these councils of many kinds of beings. I mean, what a privilege. I think that child was very blessed to have that experience.
That is for sure. Well, that's the last page of our book. And maybe we can, well, I'm sure you've learned a few things, I think, about how there are many different ways our children have had great responsibility and learning and friendly relationships being taught by the ETs. Barbara, also, I have a question for you. And through all your regressions, and I know from my experience, I've always wanted to do a book to help other kids, like I was, to not only look to the stars, but be curious about the vastness of the universe,
Yes.
to be open to all the different people and types of people. If you look at the octopus, or you look at a giraffe, if you look at different animals that we have on this planet, we're all weird looking, really. We all have different
And
facial, we're colors, we're polka dots, we're all different shapes and forms, from fish to look at rhinos. I mean, you know, they're the judgment of the way other people look. And thank God for Star Wars and a lot of the movies that have shown different beings. But anyway, what are some of the clues that you've seen in your regressions with people, or in
yes,
discussions about clues to what to look for in your children, or to talk about with your children? Because we want to open, the whole purpose of the book, and any book is a children's book, is to create dialogue and discussion on unusual topics, or not so unusual topics like this. So,
right. Well, you know, there actually are many clues that children have, and anybody of any age can have, that get them wondering about, where did that happen? Where did that come from? And then sometimes it leads them to remembering unusual things that have happened, and eventually maybe they'll come to me or somebody else for a regression to find out the details. So a very typical thing that a child or any person of any age will find is some kind of unusual marking on their body. Like they'll wake up, or they'll be in the shower, or they'll be getting dressed, and suddenly they'll see on their arm or their leg or their stomach, or somebody else will see it on their back, that there's a marking. It might be like a little line of pinprick marks, little pink marks that look like pinpricks. And it might be a circle of little pinprick marks, or it might be a perfect triangle or a square of pinprick marks. And whoever discovers that on their own body, think, I didn't do that. And especially in the middle of the night, where did that come from? Or it might be a little scoop-shaped mark, as if some of the skin had been scooped out with a very small instrument. And that marking could be on the calf or the thigh or the arm, or just about anywhere. And sometimes people will wake up in the morning and they'll realize that, oh, wow, this is where my pajamas are on inside out. And yet I know I didn't put them on inside out. Or the pajamas might be put on upside down, or they might not even have their pajamas on anymore that they had put on when they went to bed the night before. Maybe they have somebody else's clothes on. I worked with a woman who had gone to sleep with panties and a t-shirt. And when she woke up the next morning, she had a Japanese t-shirt with the Japanese label in the back. I mean, it had really come literally from Japan. And, that of course caused a lot of wondering, how did I get this Japanese t-shirt and where's mine? So that's another clue. Um, Sometimes a child will be playing in the daytime, maybe with the favorite doll or favorite stuffed animal, and the child is taken for an hour or two and then return. But sometimes, with some children, I actually know that they've been returned without the favorite doll or the favorite stuffed animal. And that bothers the children more than the fact that they've been mysteriously taken. Like, where's my doll or where's my stuffed animal? So that sort of thing happens once in a while. Um, Sometimes children or an adult too might return with grass on their feet. In other words, they'll wake up one morning not aware that anything has happened, and yet they've got grass and dirt on their feet, as if they had been outside during the night. And yet they may not have remembered anything about that at all. That's happened with several people I've worked with. And then there's always the situation of missing time. Like a child might be walking home from school, walking alone, or even with a playmate, and suddenly the child is taken. If there is a playmate there, the playmate is just made to be not aware, and that child just goes on to his or her own home. But the one who's taken is missing for usually an hour and a half or 2 hours. And when that child gets home again, the parent says, well, where were you? You're supposed to come right home from school. And the child says, well, that's what I thought I did. In other words, these beings have so many ways of approaching people without the people being aware of it, even if they're conscious and doing something like walking home from school in the daylight. So that has happened to many people when they were children. And there was just no way to explain that to the parents. And the parents are completely baffled. And they think, what's the matter with my child? Why doesn't my child remember what he did for a couple of hours? And, it's not the child's fault at all. So another clue that something might be happening for a child or adult is that they will see a UFO craft up in the sky, and it's not way, way, way up. It seems to be getting closer. Many people have described that the craft, the UFO, came right over the roof of their house or right over the backyard. And that's all the person might remember. But if we do a regression to that experience of having seen the UFO come closer and closer and closer, in most cases, we realize that an encounter has actually happened and that person has been taken away for a while. So this happens to children, or it happens to many, many people. Also, many children at night will be sound asleep, and suddenly they wake up. They don't exactly know why. They didn't hear anything, but they have the very strong impression that they need to go outside. Now, if it's winter time, that is something that they would not normally choose to do, or even if it's milder weather. But the child feels the tremendous urge to get up out of bed and go downstairs and to the front door and out the door and to go outside. And what they find typically outside is that there is a craft very nearby. And they may or may not remember that consciously the next morning, but they have actually been taken away by that craft for an hour or two. So close sightings, no matter what age the person is who has one, is very often, I think most often, in my experience working with people, most often is an indicator that there was more to the sighting than met the eye. In other words, an actual encounter being taken away for an hour or two had happened that the person had not been aware of. Now, I want to say, because people might be wondering, how is it that we're not aware of those experiences when they're actually happening? And yet we can find out in regression all the details, every single moment of that experience that the person was not consciously aware of. And that is because we each have a wonderful subconscious part of the mind. And the subconscious part of the mind has recorded absolutely every moment that we have experienced. Even it has recorded those moments that we were not consciously aware of. So, in one of these encounters, abductions, as many people call them, all that happened is recorded in the subconscious part of the mind. And with the state of regression, which is deep relaxation, which many people call hypnosis, in that very nice, deeply relaxed state, focusing on whatever it is they want to find out about, like maybe going outside and seeing a craft coming very close to them. Maybe that's all they remember. But in the regression, the subconscious part of the mind will let them relive that whole experience, not only seeing the craft come by, but what happened to be taken onto the craft, how that happened, what the beings look like, what occurred on the craft, what the different beings might have said to them. In other words, so all the details of the experience. And by now, I've regressed at least 3,000 people, and some of them many times. So it's been almost 5,000 regressions to people's extraterrestrial experiences. And by and large, the people always express to me after one of these regressions that they are so relieved and pleased to know what occurred. Because often, if something mysterious is happening, we're afraid of it because we don't know what to expect. And the beings who come to visit the person and take the person usually are so different looking than we are. And that can make us be afraid too. We just absolutely don't know what to expect. And particularly when the beings affect the person so that the person is not able to move or to call out. And that is scary too, because we don't normally experience that. So it's understandable why many people are afraid of these experiences, and very often will put it off for years, even decades, before they will find me or someone to regress them to the details of what are those experiences. So children are right in there, having seen unusual beings in the room or elsewhere, or just suddenly disappearing.
Right. And that happened to me too. I mean, I'm still remembering. It happened to me when I was 5 and 6 and 10. And I
Uh,
still remember all the dreams. And even in our regression, as often happens, you don't remember necessarily all of it. I remember the bright lights. I remember the grays there. I remember some of the other beings there. You remember part of it, and there's a lot of my whole childhood was lost time. But I do remember it, and the more we do, the more we meditate, the more we work on that, the more I'm remembering. I'm getting more glimpses now of all my dreams that I had, zooming through the universe that I've categorized in my art. I'm getting glimpses of my off-planet trips that I've been on a lot of the last couple of years. So we have to remember that it's, these are vague, you get sort of knocked out. You don't necessarily remember everything. And I'm remembering more and more over time. It was triggered by the regression. And we just keep asking, and we keep asking to remember, like I have been, and I am remembering more and more. And what we find as we sort of close up here, the whole purpose of this is really the ETs are here to help us, that they're positively helping us to remember, helping us to protect our planet, helping us to pick and choose every day of our lives. How can we help? How can we play our part to help humanity shift the level of frequency up right now? And we are in a big reset and a big renaissance right now, a big shift of frequency uplifting. So we're all trying to help the people that are either in fear, we are in love, or we're in fear, who are scared about some of these experiences that they've had glimpses of, or they don't feel like there's hope for the earth to survive. We rally everyone under a love army and to really pay attention to see how we can all help to be activists and disclose for ourselves how we can be part of the change, the positive shift that we can really participate in, that you do and I do in my own ways. And it's, just sort of wrap up, we're here to help our children, who are the leaders of the future, who are we pass the baton on to them, and they have a big responsibility, as do we. But we've gotten so much wonderful feedback from our book. People are remembering, people are grateful to see the pictures, to help them come to terms with what is going to happen more and more in the future. They are coming, they are here, and we hope that Barbara and I can continue to help open people's minds to the possibilities of different colors and shapes and forms of people that are, maybe when we're gone, or maybe in the next few years they're coming. We've seen them, you've seen them, I've seen them. They are coming, and they do look different, and so do we all. So let's just try to keep our eyes and our hearts open and do whatever we can do to shift to the positive next steps of our humanity as it changes. Part of it's pretty depressing right now with some of the pollution and things going on the planet, but we too can help shift that by positive feelings and intentions and manifesting daily in our lives to help others. So Barbara, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, you're welcome.
And
Great
would you like
pleasure.
oh, thank you. It was great to go through the book again and to share these positive stories. And obviously people can find you on, tell them how they can find you if they want to
Sure.
contact you.
Well, I think the best way is to go to my website, which is BarbaraLambRegressions.com. BarbaraLambRegressions.com. And on that page, on that website, there's also the ability to send me an email message. It's a place for that. And so that's how I got a lot of requests for regressions of people of all ages. They come through the website. That's really the best way, I think, to do that. So the work is ongoing. Hopefully there are other people, more and more, I think, being trained to do this. And hopefully the extraterrestrial part of it will be part of the ongoing work that will happen. But I'll keep on keeping on.
Oh, me too. And I'm MaryEdwardsDesign.com if anybody wants to reach out to me. But we're here to help, and we are guides. That's all we are, is we're here to answer questions and help people along in their journeys here on Earth and beyond. So thank you for connecting with the stars and with Star Barbara Lamb today and myself, Mary Edwards. So we look forward to seeing you next time, Barbara. Come back soon and we'll talk about some of your ET experiences. If you,
Okay.
all righty. Well, goodbye for today. Take care of each other and be hopeful, be positive, and look forward to seeing you soon.
And
Thank
be
you all.
loving, be
Be
loving
loving.
to each
Yes.
other. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Loving kindness is big today. It's really big, and it's time to put our hearts out there. So,
Yeah.
anyway, take care, all. Lots of love to everybody. Bye.
Bye.